This is Michaela from I Deserve It, the podcast, the very first episode. I'm really excited to be here with you guys and just to be able to share everything. And I'm so excited to see how well this is going to go. I actually just had to re-record so much content because I had a technical error and I lost all of my work. So that really sucked. But I have been listening to the first episode to do some editing and just try to make it as perfect as possible because it's the launch episode. And just there's some times where I feel like I sound like a robot. So I'm so sorry. I am so new to podcasting and I'm just learning. And obviously with each episode, I hope it gets a little bit better. And I just really hope you guys can stick it out and give me some honest feedback and that it can just be a show that we love to listen to. So if you're here, thank you for your support. I'm really excited and I hope you enjoy. Welcome. My name is Michaela. I'm so excited you could be here to join me on the launching episode of my first podcast ever. I have been waiting a really long time to start a podcast, and now just seemed like a really good time to do it. Basically, the whole idea behind the podcast was to be able to help people in bad situations or people that are working on self-improvement, wellness, body positivity, navigating healthy relationships after being in a toxic one, everything about personal well-being. I'm basically here to be your cheerleader. So I went through a pretty unhealthy relationship for 4 years. I got my children out of it, so I don't regret it at all. And actually, the stuff that I went through has just made me so much stronger as a person. And I have loved being able to give advice and guidance to people that are going through the same kind of situation. So that's been really cool for me to be able to help someone leave a situation like that. Some parts of this podcast might get a little uncomfortable, I guess would be the word, when I start talking about stuff that I've been through. I do want to note that I haven't been a victim of any kind of physical violence. My ex did not ever put his hands on me. It was all just a mental abuse type of situation. However, no matter what the abuse, it's all very important. A lot of the stuff goes together. So I just want to really touch on that and just let everyone know that if you're listening, there might be some sensitive content. But a little bit about me, if you don't know me, I'm actually from Indiana. I moved to Hawaii in August of 2021. I moved from the Muncie area, which is an hour north of Indy, but I actually grew up in Elkhart, Indiana, which is close to South Bend, Notre Dame. People usually can distinguish that. So why did I move to Hawaii? Because everyone wants to move to Hawaii. I'm just kidding. I came to Hawaii in June of 2021 to visit my friend. And a few months before I came, she was like, do you want to go on a date with this guy? Go out to dinner, basically celebrate the exit of my toxic relationship and just have dinner with a nice guy. And that is just a whole story in its own. Probably the cutest story ever. I might be a little biased, but I'm pretty sure that it is the cutest. I will just dedicate an episode to how I met my boyfriend and how that went, because it really is really exciting thing. And it is such a huge part of my life. And really, when I think about it and I'm sharing it, I just want people to know that whatever state that you're in right now, whether it is a good position or you're battling something, there is happiness waiting for you. And it sounds so cliche, and I totally get it because half of the time I can't even comprehend the position that I'm in or how I got to be here. It is still so baffling to me a year and a half later. I don't understand. So just be positive. That is literally the number one piece of advice that I could give anyone, because no matter what bullshit I was going through, I would always find the silver lining, or I would always find a way to stay positive. There were days where that was literally the only thing that was pulling me through. So I cannot stress it enough how important it is to just find the positivity of your day, no matter how small it is. Every little piece counts. Anyway, I want to talk about the survey that I gave to my social media. When I thought about starting the podcast, I thought it was really important to know what people want to hear, because I can talk about my story and I can talk about myself all day long, but ultimately you're going to relate best to your own situation. So I asked the question, what do you guys want to hear from me? What do you want for me to discuss? And I got a really good amount of answers. I just wanted to share with you some of those, because essentially this is going to be the content of all of the later episodes. And I can touch on them a little now, but yeah, I just thought it would be really good to share. The first response that I have on this list says, being you to find the right relationship, no matter how uncomfortable it is. And I cannot say enough that it is literally the best feeling. I am 1,000,000% myself with Gary. That's my boyfriend. I don't think I mentioned that. I can literally just be as weird or silly or quirky as I want to be, and he doesn't care. He literally loves me for who I am through and through, no matter how clumsy I am or the weird things that I say. It doesn't matter to him. And that is the kind of relationship that you want to be in. I can tell you that when I was with my ex, we were together for 4 years, and I constantly had people telling me that I'm not myself anymore and that they don't know who I am. It's really sad when you feel that way about yourself, but when other people start to notice, it just makes you feel 100 times worse. So this is an absolute wonderful topic of discussion, finding someone to just love you for the person that you truly are. Another response had someone ask how to identify and understand red flags. This is kind of a tricky one in the sense that we know the red flags, we know what they are, but I don't think that's the issue when we're in that unhealthy relationship. I think that we see the red flags, we know that they're there, and we're choosing to ignore them, at least further on down the road. Okay, so obviously in the very beginning, any little things that would happen, I just kind of shrugged it off. After a year or 2 or 3 or 4, there's not really an excuse anymore, because people are probably telling you by now that you're not in a good position, and you know that you're not, but you've been there such a long time that it's scary to leave, or there might be a million reasons why you're not leaving. I can say that for my personal situation, I saw so many red flags, and I just thought, it'll get better. I can fix this. I can help him. I can make this better. And let me just tell you that it is not your responsibility to fix somebody. When you're in a relationship that is healthy and it is good and you both can be there for each other, then there will be times where it's 50-50, 20-80, 100-100. It's up to you to be there for your partner, but you can't confuse that with someone just leeching on you and just bringing you down. It's not the same thing. I think it's really important to understand the difference between those two things. Someone else wrote how to find self-love and how to love yourself, how to feel like a good mother or even person while feeling lost within yourself, how to not feel so guilty for all the bad things that happen, how to not suck at being a mother. First of all, we all suck at being moms, and I'm sorry if that's harsh. I just think that people really try to portray this image of being this like picture perfect mother. And the truth is that before you have a kid, you're not a mom. When you have a 2-year-old, you never had a 2-year-old before. When you have a 3-year-old, you've never had a 3-year-old before. You're always learning. When the next kid comes, maybe you've had a 2-year-old, but this kid's completely different on every level. I feel like you're always learning and you're always technically a new parent because you've never had a child that age before. And when it comes to the next kid, they're just different. So honestly, you don't suck at being a mom. You're just a normal mom, right? I'll tell you that the best thing that you can do for your children is put yourself first. You have to put yourself first, because if you are in a negative space and you were feeling bad about yourself and you were just really low, then you're not being the best that you can for them. And I know people always say, put your children first above everything else, but you have to put yourself first. You have to put your relationship first. You need to create the loving and positive environment for those children to grow up in, because you staying with your abusive ex or staying in a negative situation is not good for your children. You're doing more harm than good. You just kind of have to look at it in like this broad perspective, realize that your happiness comes before anyone else's. That doesn't make me a shitty parent. It really doesn't, because I'll tell you that since I started putting myself first, my kids are so much happier and our home is just happy and it's positive. And my kids aren't coming up to me, patting my back and laying on me and saying, "It's okay, mommy," because I'm sitting there crying. And that's what they used to do every day. And it's really sad that my kids had to see me like that. Just put yourself first. When it comes to loving yourself, the first thing you need to do is strip all of the negative energy out of your life, whether it is a person or it's an environment. Whatever you can do to get rid of that is going to help you tremendously. When I left my ex, I moved into a townhouse with my kids, and they were 1 and 3 at the time. At first, it was just really overwhelming to know that it was just me and them. I just wasn't sure how I was going to do it. And then once we got there and we got settled in, it was just I would get off of work, I would pick them up at daycare, we would go home, and I'm just like, what are we going to eat? I don't have to cook for anyone but myself and the kids. And honestly, the kids are just so picky at this point that they just have these set meals, and they want to eat hot dogs, or they want to eat rice, or they want to eat Happy Meals, whatever it may be. I was just there to provide food for myself. And so I went a little crazy for a while, and I was door dashing, and I was getting pizza, and sometimes I would just make an extravagant dinner just for myself, steak and shrimp, whatever it may be, but it made me happy. Okay. And while I'm sitting there watching TV in my new home that is decorated the way that I like it, I'm drinking a glass of wine, watching true crime, and I just felt really good. And I think that the first step to learning to love yourself is to get into a positive mindset and to make yourself happy. We need to get out of this normal that says we can't just do stuff for ourselves. And that kind of goes back to what I said about putting yourself before your children. You have kids and you're out shopping, and all of a sudden it's well, I was going to go get this for myself, but my kids need this. You know what? Your kids are fine. We got so much shit from my kids for Christmas, and literally 2 months later, they don't even play with half of it. And it's ridiculous. Kids are just happy being happy. They want to feel loved. If they have a few toys to play with, they're really happy. We have it in our minds that we need to constantly just be showering them with things. And you know what? We don't have to. What we need to do is make ourselves happy, and that happiness is going to reflect onto our children, because they can feel your energy. They feel if you're happy, if you're sad, all of it. That is just my biggest piece of advice. And with that, I started to see a different glow about myself. And I mean, my body image didn't change, nothing like that. I just could see the happiness when I looked at myself. Honestly, if you want to be in a healthy relationship, you cannot do that until you love yourself first. You need to know how to love yourself and what is acceptable. before you can find someone else to do it for you. That is just the task at hand here, is put yourself first, make yourself happy, buy the shoes, whatever it may be, crack open a bottle of wine, watch some true crime. It makes me happy. Whatever it is that makes you happy, just do it. Our next response says, I think topics including having children during all of this is important, and how integrating your new relationship in with your kids too. My boyfriend and I are good and the kids give me life, but people don't talk enough about the transition and how hard it can be. So in my personal situation, it is not like this for everyone. My transition was really easy. My kid's dad was in and out of jail a lot, and so they kind of became accustomed to talking to him on the phone for 6 months at a time. And, when I left, my kids were 1 and 3, like just turned 1 and 3. So they were young enough that it was easy, but it's not always like this. And especially if the person that you have children with is not in a situation like that. So my ex was very accommodating to signing the paperwork to letting the kids move here with me because he was trying to get in a position to better himself. So it was mostly me at home with the kids anyway. We split up. They were really young, and then we moved. It was a really easy transition for them. So I think that honestly, the biggest transition was for my boyfriend because he didn't have any children of his own. I'll touch on this in another episode when I explain how we met each other, but he only got to be with my children for a week before we all moved here. And it takes a really special kind of person to do that. Honestly, he is literally the most amazing parent ever. And he kind of just blows me out of the water with the whole parenting thing because, there's always just 2 different kinds of parents. He's a really loving parent. And I mean, he doesn't just let them get away with stuff. Yes, we discipline them and whatever, but I'm definitely the hard parent. He's always just hugging them and being loving. And I'm just cool, love you, let's high five or something. I'm just not that kind of parent. I'll read a few more of these and then I really want to dive into my past and kind of the situation that I was in. So a few more of these topics say, bring up self-love and how toxic influences and PTSD manifest in valuing your well-being and demanding respect. That kind of goes along with what I said earlier about putting yourself first and doing things that make you happy. How to leave the toxic relationship and how to love yourself again. Unlearning unhealthy patterns while building on a healthy relationship. That's a really big one for me. Really, really big. Listening to the person that you're with or trying to be with. A lot of the time they're telling us what we need to know. We just aren't listening. Very good one. Narcissistic partners, toxic versus healthy relationship differences, dating military. My boyfriend is in the Army, but only for another week. And then he will be in the Space Force. So super cool. How to support a partner with past toxic relationships. Also a really good one. Gary and I both came from unhealthy relationships. So that's going to be a good one to talk about. The struggles of being a mom. Listen, we could go on about that shit all day, every day, because just in the time I've been trying to record this for 15 minutes, my kids have literally came in here 900 times. So we just won't even get into that right now. What it's like dealing with PTSD in a healthy relationship, going from a toxic domestic violence, narcissistic relationship to a healthy one, unlearning old patterns and habits, etc. Really good topic. Really resonates with me. Forgiveness, how to not feel guilty for walking away. How to retrain your brain after trauma to trust again. Have these experiences impacted your kids' social and emotional health in any way? I know they're young, and were they aware of the change and missing parent? If so, how did you help them cope? Was it a motivator to leave the toxic relationship for them? I've worked with women who stay in abusive relationships for the fear of being alone. Hearing your story may save so many women. I'm absolutely loving this. I love that, and I really do intend to get more into in depth with the way that my kids were affected by all of this, just from start to finish, not even just from like leaving, because I think that a lot of the unhealthy relationships that involve children, most of the time we stay because we don't want the kids to be apart from the other parent. So that's just a really good topic to talk about. Are you going into detailed info on how abuse starts, continues, etc.? I think a lot of people outside of our situations don't get what we deal with on the daily. Also, there are no supports for our kids other than individual therapy. We need more support systems. Absolutely. And I think I might have mentioned earlier that when you're not in a toxic relationship and you've never been in one, you don't understand. I'm sorry to say that because I'm sure you want to understand, but you don't and you won't until you go through it yourself. Before I was with my ex, I would constantly ask my girlfriends who were in unhealthy relationships, like, why are you still with that guy? Just leave him. And it's really easy to just look at someone that is in an abusive situation and be like, leave. It's stupid that you're not leaving. Why wouldn't you just leave? These are the options that you have. It's so easy to do that, but you don't understand what it takes to leave that. It doesn't mean that you're weak and it doesn't mean anything bad about you. It's just, it's not easy. And I don't think it's ever been easy for anybody. And I can tell you, even now, having gone through that, I have a friend that is with the absolute worst guy in the whole universe, and I literally pray daily for her to leave him. But it frustrates me still that she won't. But now I kind of have a little bit of an understanding why, and you know, the repercussions that it could have for her. So I think that if you've never been through it, the best thing for you to do is just be there, be supportive, and offer whatever help that you can. But telling them you need to leave, this isn't good for you, and just making them feel bad about staying, it's not okay. It doesn't help at all. It makes it a lot worse. I'm really thankful for my friends and family that stuck around and didn't just like cut me off, because there are plenty of times that they could have. Really good topic there. This one says, resources are so important. I know several people who are in bad situations and they do not have the resources or the courage or guidance to leave their situation. So I know every place is different, and what I can offer are some different resources as far as like domestic violence hotlines or shelters or different legal things that you can go through. And we'll definitely touch base on that later, but just to kind of respond to that topic. This one says, how to leave an unhealthy relationship safely. That is such a concern, and that is a huge reason why a lot of people don't leave, because it's not safe for them. And I know if you've never been through it, you don't quite understand that, but sometimes they might be putting their lives into danger. So there are steps and planning and processes that have to be put into place before they can even consider leaving, all the while keeping it kind of down low and just not letting anyone know like what's going on. Someone said, love your story. You stood up to your ex and did what you needed to do for you and your kids. Thank you. You do you, boo. Tell the world and make them see that toxic relationships aren't normal. I am here to encourage people to leave all the toxicity behind and just to do what makes them happy, because the life on the other side of that is so fucking awesome. I'm just here to say that right now. I think that this is going to be a really good resource for people that have dealt with domestic violence or know someone that is. But on the flip side, I know I didn't want to focus the whole podcast on the relationships. I do want to throw some content out there about just overall wellness and body positivity and just parenting and just a whole general lifestyle approach on how to just like be your best self and just how to like be happy. And it's so weird because it's just like what we're on the earth to do, but we don't actually know how to do it, right? So it's just like really crazy. I do just want to dig in a little bit into my past and kind of just give you a little bit of an understanding where I came from and how I got to be where I am now. Are you obsessed with podcasts the same way that I am? If so, you've probably thought about starting your own, but you have no idea where to start. At one point, that was me, and so I did all of the research and I stumbled across Buzzsprout. It doesn't take a lot to start the actual podcast. Just start with some gear that you already have. I recorded mine on an old headset. If you decide that you are really enjoying it and that you want to upgrade, Buzzsprout has tons of guides to help you find the right equipment at the right price. Buzzsprout can get your show listed on every major podcast platform. I am listed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and a few others. The team at Buzzsprout is passionate about helping you succeed, so you can join over 100,000 podcasters already using Buzzsprout to get their message out to the world. With Buzzsprout, you'll get a great-looking podcast website, audio players that you can drop into other websites, detailed analytics to see how people are listening, tools to promote your episodes, and more. I was so worried about starting my podcast because I didn't know anything, but Buzzsprout made it so easy. Are you ready to get started? Follow the link in the show notes. It lets Buzzsprout know that I sent you. It gets you a $20 Amazon gift card if you sign up for a paid plan, and it helps support my show. What are you waiting for? Start your podcast today. So funny story, I got married when I was 18. This is not the ex I'm referring to. It was just my high school boyfriend and we were just young and dumb, whatever. We were married. We decided that it was more like friendship and he cheated on me, but I just forgave him and we all moved on with our lives. So in 2015, February to be exact, I moved from Elkhart to Muncie, which is about a 2.5 hour difference. It might only be 2.5 hours, but it was just a complete lifestyle change for me. Elkhart South Bend area is very on the rise. It's more of a city atmosphere. And when I moved, I didn't move to Muncie. I moved to some little towns outside of Muncie. Literally, the towns were so small that like one town didn't even have a stoplight and not even a grocery store. So like it's just complete night and day. There's like ginormous cornfields in between each town. You have to drive like 30 minutes to get anywhere. And really funny, the town that I moved to was called Pennville, and I moved there with my grandma. And so, like I'm familiar with the areas because I would like go there as a child. My dad is from the area and things like that. But like moving there was just a total culture shock. And so I actually went to the gas station to get gas, and the pumps were just so old that they weren't even like digital. Like they actually had like number dials or whatever that just like flip. Like it wasn't electric at all. I didn't even know how to like get gas. So that was really embarrassing. But anyway, I just got really off topic. February 2015, I ended up there. It was my first time being single as an adult. I was just about to turn 22 and, I didn't really know anybody except for my family. So I just started this new life and I went to school to be a pharmacy tech. I started bartending in this little bar in Pennville and actually turned out to just be the most fun job ever because when you work in a little town like that, you just learn to know everyone. It just makes work so enjoyable. So yeah, I worked there. I was going to school for pharmacy tech. So later on down the road, I decided that I wanted to go to cosmetology school. I've always been really into makeup, doing hair, things like that. And I decided to drive an hour and a half to Indianapolis 3 days a week for 10 hours a day to go to the Aveda Fredericks Institute, which was just like a really nice cosmetology school. If you aren't familiar with the Aveda brand, they are owned by Estee Lauder. So really like classy stuff, I was just really enjoying doing that. I wanted to move to Indy. I wanted to finish school. Then I wanted to move to LA. So I was bartending 4 days a week and I was going to school 3 days a week. So really, really busy and just really enjoying my life. At this point, I think that I was really loving myself. I was really happy. Things were just really good. I picked up a shift in the bar one night because my coworker was sick or something. So I come to work and mind you, I work in a little dive dive bar. So you know everybody. It's not often that someone different comes in. And if they do, they're probably from just like a neighboring town. But you talk to them, you get to know them. That's just like part of the job. So this guy comes in one night and I'm working. My family's there hanging out because my family is really cool. And this guy's just like talking to me, whatever. He's like, I haven't been in this bar in 5 years. Someone posted on Facebook that she was like giving away free drinks. So I came. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And the girl was just buying a bunch of drinks and giving them out because she wanted people to come drink. Anyway, yeah, I'm just like talking to this guy, and eventually it gets to the point where he's just like, go out with me, go to dinner with me, blah, blah, blah. Well, I'm just like, I don't date people that are my customers because it's just not what I do. And it was just this back and forth thing forever. And then I think like we became Facebook friends. And after a few weeks of like saying no, I just decided to go to dinner with him. That is how I met my kid's dad. I think before I move on, it's a really good time for me to note that my kid's dad is not a bad person. I don't want this to come off as, that I'm making a podcast to bash him or anything like that, because that is not the case. I really want to share my story and share what I went through to kind of help others like in the same position. Just because our relationship was so toxic doesn't mean that he's a bad person or that I'm a bad person. We just were not good for each other. So I just felt like I really needed to note that here, because some of the situations were, pretty bad, but it doesn't reflect that either of us are bad people. I decided to go on the date with him. We ended up going to a really nice dinner and doing some Christmas shopping, surprisingly, because it was just really close to Christmas. And he had a 6-year-old son he wanted to go buy a present for. We had a really good time. We talked a lot. And during the night, he said that he needed to tell me something. He said that he used to be a drug addict and that he's been sober for a year, that he's doing really well, has a good job, everything like that. I didn't really know a lot about drug addiction at that point in my life. It just wasn't something I was really familiar with. So I looked at it as that is your past. And who am I to judge you for what you've done in your past? That's just not the kind of person that I am. What I didn't really know about drug use at that point in my life was that it is just this forever battle that you are dealing with. You never really get away from it. And I hate to say that because some people overcome it and they get to really good places in their lives and they never look back. And that is amazing. But every day is hard work for them. They can't just break an arm and go to the hospital and need pain medication. They can't just go to the bar and drink because with an addiction, it's easy to just replace it with something else. I didn't know all of those things at the time, that it was just going to be this forever struggle that we have to deal with. Over the next 3 months, like the first 3 months of our relationship, we basically lived together. He was over at my house every single day. Eventually, that was just it. I can't really recall a lot of the fighting or anything from that point in the relationship because it was so long ago and worse things have happened that it just kind of like deleted out of my mind. I feel like that's a pretty normal thing to try and rid yourself of the trauma that you go through, at least for me that it is. I can recall in the first few months we were together, before I got pregnant, he had an issue with me working at the bar because he didn't like the way that guys were hitting on me and whatever, which, I understand that he didn't have to sit there and listen to it, but it's my job as a bartender to just make money and give people drinks. So yeah, guys are going to say really stupid stuff. But this one night in particular, I remember him coming up there and sitting while I was working, and these older gentlemen that owned a bar in a neighboring town were there drinking. Every time they ordered a shot, they would tip me $5 each. And they kept saying comments about my breasts and other things like that. And, as a bartender, you just kind of like laugh, like, whatever, here's your shot. Because literally in like a 10-minute period, I've made like $20 and they just keep going. So it was just really making him mad. He didn't want me to work there anymore. That was tough for me because I loved my job and I loved doing what I was doing. I ended up going to work for Maurice's, a clothing store, working part-time. Obviously now I'm just getting paid hourly, so I'm not making shit for money, which really sucked. About a week after starting there is when I found out I was pregnant with my daughter. Like I mentioned, it's really hard to recall the events of the relationship that early on. I do remember more from the point of being pregnant on, because that's when it started to get like really bad. I was still going to school 3 days a week for 10 hours a day, and then working the other 4 days that I wasn't at school. So I was really busy a lot of the time. This is kind of when I started to notice that he was a little bit controlling. If I was running late or I wasn't home at the right time, it always sparked a fight. At this point in the relationship, it's still really early on, so the fights weren't huge, but I do recall just like a lot of accusations being thrown out. That did start when I was working at the bar, and I just really shrugged it off because I know that he didn't like me working at the bar. Generally, I would close the bar at like 3, get stuff cleaned up, and then go home. And I lived like 5 minutes away. But if it was really dead, I could close the bar early and then just go home. And so he didn't like that because I could say that I was at work till 3, but actually close the bar and leave early. And then he thought I was like messing around with someone. So the cheating thing was always this huge like elephant in the room. He was just always accusing me of cheating on him. And it's because he went through some trauma of being cheated on in the past. He just projected that onto me. No matter how many times I would say, I'm not doing that to you, I would never do that to you, it just was this never ending battle. And honestly, that was like the root of every single problem. The clothing store that I worked for was specifically for women. We didn't sell men's clothes or men's items. So if men were shopping in there, it's because they were shopping with their wives or they were shopping for their wives. We closed at, I want to say like 8 o'clock, maybe 9 o'clock. I don't remember. We would close the store and then do all of our cash out stuff, get everything cleaned up, do what we needed to do before we left. And there were always 2 of us there. If someone came in late to shop, we couldn't just say, hey, you have to leave because we're closing. We would let them know we were going to close, but we can't kick them out. So if they're shopping, we have to let them finish their shopping. More times than not, that would happen. I would be stuck there until they left and not be able to get any of my stuff done. Of course, that just delays the whole timetable to where I'm getting home from work like late, and that sparks an argument. There were a couple of times where we would be fighting over text because I would let him know, hey, it's going to be a little later tonight. Someone's in here shopping, blah, 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 blah. And he would always view that as like an excuse, which was just stupid to me. So sometimes he would come to the store and he would sit outside to see if there were guys in the store or if I was actually at work. And that started to happen fairly frequently. This takes me back to the red flag conversation and how we wanted to know how to identify red flags and basically understand them, how to go about them. Being in the situation, I obviously knew this was a red flag, but I chose to pin it on past relationship trauma. So yes, I understood the red flag. I saw that it was there and I chose to ignore it. Over time, things tended to get a lot worse naturally. And he was in and out of jobs. I was making really bad money. We were just struggling. He ended up getting a job working with a friend and we moved into a pretty decent house. I mean, it had 3 bedrooms, it had a huge yard, it had a garage, everything I envisioned living in when we brought this girl into the world. So I got to decorate her nursery, and his son had a bedroom, and we had this big space to run and play outside. And we lived in this little town, but it was really nice. And I was just really happy that we had this like beginning in this house. What I can remember about the house is that's when he started sleeping on the couch all of the time, when the bigger fights started to happen. I ended up getting a second job working at a gas station when I was like 7 months pregnant, I think. It was like a really nice, like newly built gas station, and it had a bunch of like food and stuff in it. And it wasn't just like some rundown place or whatever. So I was pretty excited about it. It was something new. And I had to take a break from school because my transmission blew on the interstate and I didn't have a way to like transport myself. So I had to wait until I got a new car and after the baby was born to go back and finish my last like 2 months of school that I had. So at this point, I'm literally working like 6 days a week between both of my jobs because I'm trying to make sure that we can pay our bills and that we have money. I ended up getting promoted to assistant manager at both of these jobs, which is great because there's a little bit of a pay raise with both, but with any management job comes a little bit of responsibility. So sometimes I have to stay after work, or sometimes I have to take phone calls or text messages when people are having issues, or I have to go in when I'm not scheduled to work because someone needs something. That's just part of the job. And it ended up being a really big issue between us. And I recall him telling me not to take the manager job, that it was going to cause problems. Honestly, at that point, I wasn't thinking about my relationship. I was thinking about how I'm going to afford to take care of this baby when I'm making shit money, like $10 an hour at both jobs. A couple of months before that, I think I was 3 or 4 months pregnant. It was still pretty early on. And I got a call from him at work that he was in the hospital and I needed to come get him. And he was so worried to call me because he had relapsed on drugs and he overdosed at work. So I had to go get him from the hospital, and I can't even like tell you the feelings that I was feeling in that time. It was just this mix of fear and nerves and being scared. It was just not a feeling that I would ever want to feel again. I was terrified. And now he's relapsed into drugs. So I don't know what that means. I have no idea how any of this works. And all I could do was just say, I'm here for you, whatever you need. Like, let me help you. And unfortunately, from that time, it just kept going and it got really scary. Fast forward a few months and I'm 9 months pregnant. At this point, I've been forced on a maternity leave and I have no income. He's not really making any money, so we can't stay in our house. I am going to have a baby any day now and I have to go stay with my mom. So far, the pregnancy has just been terrible. My boyfriend goes through a drug relapse and I'm not making any money. We lose our house. I'm literally about to have a baby and I'm going to be staying in my mom's house in this tiny little room. And it's just not the way I envisioned. We were fighting all of the time. It just was not emotionally good for me or for the baby. He's still working with his friend, but I don't know if he's actually going to work or if he's just going to hang out with friends and get high, because he would leave early in the morning and he wouldn't come home till late at night. And so I'm just sitting at home constantly worried that he's going to end up dead on the side of the road or back in the hospital or get arrested or do something stupid. Every day I'm just stressed to the max. At this point too, like he doesn't even have his own cell phone because it keeps like breaking or like not paying the bills. So he's taking my phone with him and I have my iPad. So obviously I'm checking Find My iPhone, because if he is out getting high, he's not going to say, oh yeah, I went to to buy some dope today instead of going to work. Like, obviously, he's not going to do that. So I'm refreshing this location constantly on my phone, and I see him actually lying to me. I can straight up ask him, where are you? What are you doing? Oh, I'm at work. We're finishing this up and this and this and this. I'm like, okay, where are you guys working? Oh, this is the town that we're working in. So I look at the map where my phone is at, and it's showing him an hour and a half away from there to the place where he's told me in the past that he used to buy drugs. So every day I'm seeing this, and it's giving me this like awful feeling in the pit of my stomach, because how do I bring that up to him? I can't just say, yeah, I'm checking your location. A, he's going to blow up on me. B, he's just going to turn the location off. Or C, I don't even know, but it's just not going to be a good situation. And this creates two separate issues. It creates issues with trust in relationships because A, I am tracking his location from my phone, which is an invasion of privacy, and B, he's lying to me about where he is and what he's doing. That eliminates trust in a relationship, which is the number one thing that you need to survive. I mean, if you can't trust each other, you can't be together. That's just as plain as day what it is. The separate issue that this creates is the drug use in itself. I mean, even if we never fought and we had this perfect relationship, the drug use presents this huge problem, because no matter who you are, no matter what the relationship is, even if it's not an intimate relationship, right? If it's the relationship between him and a relative or his parents or his best friend or his brother or sister, it doesn't matter who the person is. If they are under the influence of drugs, then they're going to lie, because when they are going through the addiction, nothing matters to them besides getting high. So that's just like a little bit of what the first year of our relationship looked like. I mean, there were little fights, and then I had to quit my job at the bar. I ended up getting a different job. I got pregnant. There were a lot of trust issues, a lot of cheating accusations, a drug relapse, a lot of lying and fighting, and it just wasn't a really good year, but that was the calmest of the years, honestly. So that's just a little bit of how my story started and a little bit of the details from like the first year. Obviously, the further we go into it, the more in depth the stories will be, because they've been more recent and it's just a little bit easier to remember. I think that once we establish different topics for the episodes, then it'll be a lot easier to relate my situations to the topics rather than to just sit here and talk about myself, because actually that's so hard. In the podcast description or YouTube description, however you are listening to this podcast, I will have my link. And if you click on that, there is a question submission form. I would love for everyone to fill it out and ask a question or submit a content idea or like feedback, just to kind of give me a little bit of a base for the next few episodes. Since it's a new show, I'm trying to gain listeners, and I honestly can't think of a better way to do that than to talk about what my listeners want me to talk about. Any questions would be great. They can all be anonymous. I don't have to use your name. I just want to be able to answer the questions and address the content, and it'll just help me to talk about the parts of my story that can connect with you the best, I guess is the best way to put it. So link in the description, or you can DM me on my Instagram. That is also listed below. And I am so glad that you guys stuck it through to the end. So thank you so much. Thank you for all of your support, and I will see you next week.